2.1 call to order. I will call the Paris Union High School District Special Board meeting to order at 2 p.m. Going to ask for a roll call to determine a quorum. Trustee Anaya?
Here.
Thank you.
Go ahead and skip me.
Trustee Hall? Here. Trustee Garcia?
Here.
And Trustee Stafford?
Here.
And Trustee Campos? Here, so we have established the quorum. 3.1, invitation to address the Board of Trustees, closed session items only. Are there any public comments on closed session items? Thank you, Dr. Rouse. Thank you very much. And 4.1, we're going to adjourn to closed session. Do I have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Stafford and Trustee Garcia. Please vote. On the vote being taken, the vote was 5 in favor and 0 opposed. We are adjourning to closed session at 2:01 p.m. Good evening and welcome. We're at 5.1 is a special board meeting of the Paris Union High School District is reconvening at 4:31. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, 6.1, a revision, adoption, ordering of the agenda, February 25th, 2025. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia. Do I have a second? Thank you, Trustee Stafford. Thank you. Seeing no discussion, please vote. On a vote being taken, the vote was 5 in favor, 0 opposed. 7.1 is a report out of closed session.
No report.
Okay.
No report out of closed session.
Thank you, Dr. Rouse. 8.1, invitation to address the Board of Trustees on agenda items. Are there?
Yes, we do have one, and it's for 12.4.
Okay. Thank you. So we will deal with that when we get to that action item 12.4. Thank you. 9.1, consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Garcia. Trustee Hall. And seeing no discussion, please vote. On the vote being taken, the vote was 5 in favor, 0 opposed. Moving on to oral reports, 10.1, special education contribution review.
Well, I think we're still in duty. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Board of Trustees, Superintendent, Cabinet, and all of our guests here. So I have 4 very brief presentations for you tonight that were rescheduled or postponed from the last meeting. This is working. So I first wanted Dr. Rouse. I did better, did you? Oh, okay. I just thank you. You're not that magical. So I wanted to provide a little bit more information. First of all, thank you for allowing me additional time when Mimi and I presented the first interim report in January. There were some critical discussion points we needed to talk about there. But Dr. Rouse asked if I would go a little bit deeper into the contributions. And so I wanted to do that tonight. And so I want to start off first with, this is the exact slide that you saw at first interim. So this is a summary of all of our contributions. Now, what is a contribution, you may be asking? So we account for our general fund revenues in both unrestricted sources and restricted sources or funds. So we have the unrestricted general fund and the restricted general fund. And so you can see our special education contribution here. And so that contribution derives from a contribution from the unrestricted general fund to the restricted general fund in the area of special education. And I'm going to get into the details of why that is. But again, this is the slide from first interim that I wanted to elaborate just a little bit more on. Sometimes we will get asked the question, well, why do you have to make these contributions? And so that's a different reason for special education than it is for like the routine maintenance account, which is formula driven based on total expenditures in the budget. When we're talking about special education, it's when the revenues that we receive from state, federal, and local sources do not meet the needs of the total expenditures, then we have to make a contribution into that restricted fund for special education. So, there we go. Okay, so this is a summary. I want to focus now just on last year, which of course is our last completed year. It's been fully audited, and then what we are projecting for this year for 24-25. So you can see our total revenue in, I'm going to focus on 23-24 first, is $12.2 million. Our total expenditures within special education are almost $3 million. So there's a deficiency there when you take the revenue less the expenditures of $21 million. As a result, we have to make a contribution from the unrestricted general fund into special education. Now you may notice that those amounts are very, very close, but they don't match precisely. And that's because there's two very small programs within special education that carry a fund balance, and that's a low incidence grant used for like deaf and hard of hearing students, and then our CSIS dollars, and then that fund balance shrinks when we get to 24-25. But so that is the nature of a special education contribution. Another line I want to focus your attention to is the second to last one there. And this one shows the percentage of expenditures that are paid for out of that unrestricted general fund contribution. So 64.08% in 23-24, up to 65% in our estimates for this fiscal year, 24-25. I'm going to ask Sarah, you can see, I'm not going to go over all this additional detail, but I wanted to provide it to those of you that are interested. It's a lot of information. Don't worry, I'm not going to go over all of this, but you'll have access to this. You can click on those links. And so you can see in between each set of those, if Sarah would scroll all the way over, and you don't need to, Sarah, every single special education funding source or pot of money that we receive is detailed out for you there. In the revenue sources, and then it also will break down the expenditures. So whenever you are asked as a board member, well, gosh, couldn't we do X, Y, or Z if we just wouldn't have to make this contribution to special ed, or if we wouldn't have to sometimes we'll hear it called transfer. We're transferring money into the restricted funding source. Sometimes we'll even hear we're hiding it there. We're not hiding it there. We're contributing it to meet our needs because we don't receive enough state, federal, and local sources. And so this will give you the information should you desire. So we have to pay all of our special education teachers. We have to pay our special education paraeducators for their transportation, their related service providers, and so forth. So you'll have that detail should you want to look at it. I'm always happy to sit down with any one of you, one-on-one and geek out on this stuff if you want even more detail. And I know Dr. Egan's and when my special ed director would probably love to be a part of the geeking out there. So if you'd go back to the presentation, please. All right. So
I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, go right ahead.
Can we go back to that?
Yes.
This one? I know one of you, I don't remember who asked me about this. Are there any questions about this specific slide? I just want to answer all of your questions.
The only question I have, can you go back one slide?
Yes.
When you look at the projections from 24, 25 to 27, we have an increase in $3 million. Is that just the ongoing cost of what we have now, or is that an anticipation of our student population increasing in the special ed department, or are we reducing the amount of students?
We're right until the last thing.
Okay.
So Well, actually, no, you were right actually on all points because I'm gonna show you the enrollment trends. So
Okay.
these are our best projections, and I'm gonna focus in another presentation on why we do multi-year projections and why they're approximately right, but they never can be precisely right. So this is us, just like we do within the unrestricted general fund, and we have 12,000 funding lines that we deal with, and so just like we do for every single one of those on a precise level and on a bigger level by funding source, we are projecting what those expenditures are going to be and projecting what those revenues are going to be. So the expenditures are projected to increase because the costs of special ed, the related service providers, obviously the majority of special education is salaries, just like it is for the rest of the budget. So those are projected to increase because of step and column increases, step increases would apply for classified and certificated, column only for certificated. Health benefit increases, the cost of transportation, the costs of when we send our students to non-public schools. There's a lot of variables in there. Interestingly enough, because you mentioned are we projecting the population to decline, and the special ed population has declined this year, but our expenditures have increased pretty astronomically, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead 2 slides. So remember that I said we wanted to talk a little bit more about the percentage of our expenditures that come from the contribution. So do not come from the revenue sources that we receive federally, locally, or from the state. For the last 2 years, the last year and then our projection this year, between 64 and 65%. This is a slide that I took from School Services of California, and they got the credit there at the bottom. And this is showing the statewide distribution of special education costs by funding source. And so what you can really clearly see here is that for Paris Union High School District, we don't quite match up with where we're at statewide, okay? So we contribute a larger portion as a different way of saying that, from our unrestricted general fund to special education. So what does that mean? What that means is we need to take a deeper look into our special education expenses, because the greater our special education expenses are, the higher our contribution is going to be, correct? I want to be really clear that I am not saying that our special education students don't deserve the services. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is we have to look very carefully at why our data is so different from statewide data, and do we have the processes in place to properly identify the services that they need so that we're not over-identifying? Are we putting our students in the least restrictive environment and not incurring expenses that we may not otherwise have to incur? So it really just means we have to take a deeper dive, and we are doing that through the school services study that I know we talked about a few months ago that I think starts in, it is February, so we should be starting soon. So we really need to take a deep dive into what our processes are for identification of students and the services that they receive, because those services are costly. Okay. Okay, and then the last slide I have for you on special education, and Mr. Campos, this will go to your point. And again, this is big picture data. We have to look into the details. So this is going to show you the contribution amount by fiscal year, and then the change in that contribution. So you'll notice in that COVID year that we were in distance learning, the contribution actually went down, and probably don't have to explain that much. Our students were at home distance learning. But if we look just, those last 3 years, the contribution percentage went up by 20.39, 17.6%, and 14.36%. But if we go to the next 2 set of columns, we can track our enrollment trends. And our enrollment is not increasing by those same rates, and in fact, to Mr. Campos' point, it's actually decreasing this year, yet we're spending 14.36% in a higher contribution amount. So it's really just more evidence that we need to take a deeper dive into special education. And again, I want to repeat one more time, I am not saying our special education students don't deserve a proper education. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we just have to, with every dollar that comes in the district and goes out of the district, we have to have a careful eye on that so that we're using those dollars in the most appropriate ways. So that is what I have for you on special education. I said these presentations would be brief, but I do, if you have any questions on special education, I'm here to answer those. All right.
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
You're showing yearly. Do you ever break it down, like by week, by month? I know when I do my checkbook, I got to be precise. There is no, overages and stuff like that. So when you're saying you have, it's not precise, I want to know why it's not precise in more detail.
Well, I wouldn't say it's not precise. So yes, we can look at our expenditures and our revenues by month. We can look by week, but we would have to understand. It's better. It's not easier. It's better and it's more accurate to look at annual data. So a full year's worth of data when you're doing these types of high-level comparisons. I can assure you that Mimi Capistrano, our fiscal director, and her team are looking at that level of detail, as our special education staff. So we have monthly payroll cycles. So, if you have to, we would be able to tell, when paychecks are going out to that precise level of detail. We have different payroll cycles for regular employees versus substitute employees. We have to look at our commercial warrant process, which is, our supplies, our services, that sort of thing. And then our revenue is going to come in on an apportionment schedule that may not line up to those. So it is better when you're analyzing big picture, but it's very different than your checkbook, right?
Right. No, I understand that.
So because all of this goes into the general fund, and so that's a cash flow piece that you're
To
getting
simplify the question,
Yes,
we do have data on a monthly.
we do.
I think that's what he's asking for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can look at that, and then it will tie into this. Just remember when you're looking at that. Any other special education questions?
Thank you.
Well, relative to the contribution.
No, thank you. Okay, 10.2, Governor's proposals for the 2025-26 state budget. You know what? Excuse me. I just want to make Dr. Egan's. I did not realize. I just realized that we haven't welcomed you. So welcome aboard, Dr. Egan's. Sorry for the interruption, but I was thinking about it. So thank you and welcome aboard. It's great to see you.
All right. Okay, so wanted to provide just a very moving away from special education and into we are full into preparing for the budget for next year, and so the governor released his next slide, Sarah. So I did want to ask a question actually before I begin. I have kind of a summary slide, and then I have 9 additional slides that kind of go into some highlights from the School Services of California presentation. I can focus just on this slide if you guys want just a very brief overview on the governor's budget, or I can give you some of those higher level details, but I kind of wanted to leave that up to you.
Brief.
Can you give us this, but send us the other information so that we can read that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we have any questions, I'm sure we'll go through Dr. Ross.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Is that that's all right with everyone?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
that's
all right. Just because I know we had a long board meeting, a couple of weeks ago. So just very quickly, the governor released a preview of his proposal on January 6th. The Department of Finance provided a briefing on January 10th. That proposal projects a 2.43% cost of living adjustment for next year. That's slightly lower than the Legislative Analyst Office projected in its November fiscal outlook. There is still one more data point that will be released at the end of April before we have our final statutory COLA for next year. I've seen one calculation that could be 2.08%, but I think it's fair to say we're in the low 2 to mid 2 range for next year. Now the proposed K-12 omnibus trailer bill was released on February 1st, and so that provided us some more key details into the governor's budget proposal, and that of course needs to be negotiated with the legislature through this budget process. So I will get all of the rest of the information to you, but in short, what you will see in there is that it's really good news overall, other than COLA is lower, but COLA is fully funded, so that is good news. The risks to the budget, and you'll see this probably in many of the things you read are really the local risks to the budget and, what do we choose to do with COLA, our fund balance, that sort of thing. Okay. Questions there? I think we're gonna go to the next one, Sarah. Yeah.
We'll move on to the next one. Okay,
Yes,
10.3. Sorry, budget development and roles and responsibilities.
Okay, and then you go to the first slide. Okay, and then again, because we are right in the throes of beginning we've really done this, starting in December, beginning our budget process, we thought it would be a good idea to just go over the different rules and responsibilities of the budget process, starting at the top of the board, all of you. And you heard some of this at the LCAP mid-year review at the last meeting, but one of your roles is to approve a 3-year and the annual update to the local accountability plan. You as the board establish policy, establish philosophy, set policy, of course, for the budget. You're reviewing and you're adopting the budget. You're reviewing and adopting at least 2 interim reports, the unaudited actuals, accepting the audited financial reports, and of course, ensuring the long-term fiscal stability of the district. Next slide. Then we move on to the superintendent's role. I took these slides, by the way, adapted from a presentation that FICMAT did recently. So, Superintendent Dr. Rouse, your role, providing overall leadership for the budget process at the cabinet level, at the district level, with the leadership team, and so forth. Direct that decision-making process for the budget, the overall budget process. He's developing and or reviewing all of the recommendations that he is making to the board, ensuring regular and complete budget monitoring and reporting, implement plans, goals, and the budget, and again, according to the board's direction there. CBO, that's me, of course. And I want to make this slide and the next one clear. This is work that I do along with Mimi and others. But as we are developing the budget, we're building trust and transparency, in the process. We are providing technical expertise in the budget development and the implementation, where we're really the process experts, so to speak. We collect all of the data, work with all of the different departments, the school sites, providing accurate and timely projections so that decisions can be made. Again, providing for that collection of information and data from those with budget responsibilities, working hand in hand with Ed Services as they are developing, the LCAP and their other restricted or categorical programs. Generating complete and meaningful budget and interim reports, simplifying complex topics, like hopefully we did with special education. We will get you the monthly as well. And then developing and maintaining long-range financial projections as well. Now the program leader's role. So we have different levels of program leaders in our district. So we'll have Ed Services, both Joe and Shauna's level in terms of developing the LCAP. They'll do that with and through other people within the district. We have program leaders over different programs, different grant programs, and so they should be advocating for their programs. They should be establishing and support program goals and objectives as they're building their individual budget. Provide requested budget, staffing, and resource data. They're collaborating with staff and with the community as needed on the different programs, priorities, their resource planning. They're interfacing sometimes with funding agencies regarding compliance and planning. They're, of course, implementing the program elements. They're ensuring on a day-to-day or month-to-month basis they're effectively using those resources and minimizing carryover. The idea behind minimizing carryover, it's not that carryover from one year to another is not allowed or not permitted. It's the idea behind, today's the dollars we receive this year are for this year's students, unless there's, a good plan, going forward for that. They're monitoring their assigned budgets and programs, and then they are focusing on compliance. And last but certainly not least, especially since I think they're all sitting behind me, is the school principal's roles. So they need to be advocating for their student needs. They need to know their student data. They're collaborating with staff and community on programs, priorities, resources, planning, through the LCAP process, through the SIPSA process at the site levels. They're providing requested budget staffing and resource data. They're also monitoring their assigned budgets. They understand the relationship between the district office and the site budgets. They are effectively coordinating the use of all of the resources they have at their school sites in order to achieve the school's vision, goals, and their desired learning outcomes, and then implementing those program elements similar to the program leaders will do by aligning all of their budget allocations, again, those learning objectives for the student outcomes, and then of course, taking legal mandates in there. So we spend a lot of time together at the various levels having these conversations. We've already done, and you may have seen this in your weekly update, we've met with, as a cabinet, as different program leaders with all of the school sites, getting their priorities and really just starting that budget process. So we thought this presentation would be timely so that you knew what we were doing as it relates to the budget. Any questions there?
Okay, 10.4, surplus property and fee generation follow-up.
Okay, one more. Okay, you can go to the first slide. Okay, so this is a follow-up from the study session that you had, I think three and a half weeks ago. And so I just wanted to provide a little bit different information. You remember Serene, and you were asking me different questions, and had I known those questions in advance, I would have put a presentation together, but I just wanted to give you a little bit more information. But we do have the one piece of surplus property that was mentioned, Middle School 2, that's vacant land owned by the district. It was purchased in 2013. We purchased that land back when the enrollment at Pinacati Middle School was 1457, something like that. It's under 1,000 now. And then I put a piece of Serene's presentation in there too, just to remind you of briefly the process to dispose of any surplus property. You remember her talking about a 7-Eleven committee and different options that you could have there. But I wanted to just show you that visual graphic of where Middle School 2 is located. They're Patriot Lane and Murrieta Road there. And you'll have this presentation as well. Next slide. We also talked, or Serene talked a little bit about leases, specifically cell towers. And I think that was one of the questions asked, and I mentioned that we had two. So again, you'll have this presentation and you can click on these links, but the district does have two license or lease agreements, they're called, for two different cell towers, LA Cellular and Verizon Wireless. Both of those cell phone towers are located at our maintenance and operations facility over on Metz Road. Based on the provisions of those contracts for 24-25, those proceeds are projected to be $66,000 that you see there broken down by the two different agreements that we have, and those funds are accounted for within the unrestricted general fund. So use of proceeds, again, this is from Serene's presentation just to remind us. So just as she said, the cell tower leases, those proceeds can be used any way the board directs, and then I want to focus your attention down to the sale there. And when she talked about this disposing of the sale of a surplus property, those would be used for capital outlay for costs of maintenance of school district property. So that's just a reminder there. Actually, two more slides. So we also talked a little bit that Saturday about the Civic Center Act, which sometimes we call use of facilities. And so that's renting our facilities to various community organizations and the revenue that's behind that. So there's 4 different fee categories. Free, direct, discounted rate for local youth, and then a fair rental value. I'm providing 3 different sources of information for you there should you want to get a little bit deeper into it. But you've got your board policy and your administrative regulation there, as well as our district facility usage manual, which I did tell Adrienne upstairs I would give her credit because she wrote a beautiful manual way back in the day, and she keeps it updated. So if you get a chance, look at that, and if you're ever walking by upstairs, let her know that she did a good job. You can go to the next slide, which is probably what you really want to see is the use of those school facilities proceeds. So also as a reminder, those proceeds can only be used for capital maintenance, repair, restoration, and refurbishment. Those funds have to be accounted for separately so that we can account for those expenses separately for the above-mentioned reason. So last year is obviously our last full school year, so those proceeds were $102,000. That breaks down to the revenue, which is the fees collected of almost $57,000, and then the expenditures, associated costs. So those are, we have to bring in, custodial crews to do the setup. Sometimes campus supervision. Sometimes they'll need a technician there if they're using, the soundboard or something like that in the theater. So we do have some costs associated. We have to pay our staff many times to be there, but the net proceeds were $102,000. To date, which was like 3 weeks ago when I prepared this, we were at $49,000 for this year. So again, this was intended to just be very, very brief as a follow-up to that study session, so you could have that district-specific information going maybe a little bit deeper than the more global that you received during the study session. So happy to answer any questions, but I just wanted to give you that brief detail.
No, thank you very much, Candace. We appreciate it. Okay, written reports, 11.1, discipline, January 2025 monthly suspension report. And moving into action items, 12.1, general functions, resolution number 16, semicolon, colon. It's a colon, 24, 25, gosh, trustee compensation for missed meeting. Do I have a motion?
So
Second.
Thank you. Cool. Thank you, Trustee Hall and Trustee Garcia. Do we see any discussion? No, please vote. Upon a vote being taken, the vote was 4 in favor and 0 opposed with 1 abstention. We're going to move on to 12.2, general functions. Review and discuss consulting services with Hazard Young at TIA and Associates funded through the general fund, the amount of $12,500 monthly. Any discussion? Oh wait, I'm sorry, do I have a motion? I apologize.
So
Thank you, Trustee Hall.
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia. Any discussion?
What are we discussing for the freight rate?
Yes.
Can you say that one more time?
Oh, what are we discussing? Are we discussing if we're gonna keep them or?
Yeah, the continued service in the relationship.
I was under the impression we're continuing it unless we send them a letter saying we don't want them.
I propose we send them a letter and cut our ties. We've got what we need. We started this on superintendent search. We used them for something additional. Actually, a few items in addition. And at 12,000, what's this, 500 a month, I think we're done. And you just had a budget presentation, so I think we can all figure it out for ourselves. I would encourage us to use our COE and some of the other free services that are available. And if we need HY again, we can open a PO and bring them back at that time.
Okay, any other discussion? Please vote.
So
So
what is a yes and what is a no? What do they mean?
Oh,
Trustee Stafford you have to make a motion stating that you want to terminate or no longer use them. And then once you get a second, then you guys will vote on that. So it'll either be a yes to terminate or
Okay, to
a no
discontinue,
to
okay.
continue.
okay, I make a motion to terminate our current agreement with HY.
thank you. That's. Do I have a second?
And if we second it, it's only for the motion to be in place so that we could vote correct, not
Correct.
picking a side. Then I'll second.
Okay, thank you, trustee Garcia, with the second.
So we're voting for yes to keep, no to.
No,
Yes
so right now
to
the motion,
terminate, no to keep.
Oh, okay.
yeah, right now the motion is to terminate.
Just one last thing. If someone can explain why we would need them any further, I'd like to hear it, but
Well,
No.
the consultants for the school board, not the district. And that's why I have a little bit of confusion because it's been coming up by the district. You know, the consultants for the board, for us, when we have questions and we need guidance and direction. And I know when I was in the office of president, I consulted them quite frequently, other than just the superintendent search.
okay. But
And that's part of the contract.
we have attorneys for that we use also. And just the cost. I mean, I couldn't conscientiously approve this because of the cost. And if we need them, we bring them up. It's nothing. The company did a good job. We're happy with the results. And I think that if we need them, we bring them back.
Okay,
So,
Okay.
yes.
So, yes or
Yes to get rid of, no to keep.
Correct.
Okay.
correct.
yes
To terminate
Terminate.
and no to keep.
Okay.
Is that
Okay.
accurate?
Okay, please vote. Upon the vote being taken, there was a three opposed and 2 in favor. 12.3. General functions, review and discuss the attorney firm retention and utilization strategic plan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Trustee Hall, do I have a second? Thank you, Trustee Anaya. Any discussion? So we'll open up discussion. And if no one,
So we're moving everything over to HUF, is that correct?
yes. So what happened a few years back? We didn't have any idea of who and what kind of litigation we were involved in. We didn't know who the attorney firms were. We didn't know anything that was going on. And this was, I would say, 2 years when I became a board member. And so we had asked questions about different types of things that were going on. There was the impression that the attorneys were here for the district when they're technically there for the board to use and to make sure that we're using them to guide us properly along the lines of who we're using for our legal services and litigation. And so we felt that we were in the dark on a lot of different things. The property, kind of a lot of different subjects were coming up that we really didn't have any answers and didn't get many answers when we were there. And so we had interviewed Orbach, Huff, and Henderson to kind of be our general counsel. They kind of explained to Tony and I what it was that they provided. And so for us to kind of streamline and make everything simple, because we really we had no idea as to where we were at, what kind of litigation. And so what we decided was we interviewed Orbach, Huff, and Henderson, and we had agreed that they would be our general counsel. Now, we had given the previous superintendent basically instructions to go ahead and to start moving all cases, current cases, over to Orbach, Huff, and Henderson, and that they would be our primary counsel should anything else occur, during our time as a board. What we found out that wasn't taken care of. So that directive was not taken care of. And basically what Orbach, Huff, and Henderson were asking was they wanted to take a look at all of our litigation, all the cases that they had. And what they were going to do is they were going to take a look, because some of them, actually one of them I think we have right now in litigation that's going to court. And they basically had told us, hey, we will review all the cases. We will take what we think would serve in the best interest of the district. And also, if there were cases that were there that had already started and were going to be close to being closed, if it was in the district's interest to leave them where they were, then they would continue on with those cases so that we could be in a better position because they didn't want to start the process all over once it was about to be settled. And so that was kind of where, and we had kind of made the request a couple different times to make sure that everything and all new and ongoing cases would go through Orbach, Huff, and Henderson. Now, it's not to say that we don't have other counsel that we could use. And they had let us know, hey, if there's a certain specialty that we're not an expertise in, then we would recommend that you guys maybe look into other firms, as well as they can give a recommendation, or we could do our own research and figure out who we would want to take those pending cases, whatever it may be, if it was specific. So that was basically kind of how it all came about. And, you know, it's kind of been kicked down the road for quite a while. And we were pretty clear. But now that we have you two on board, it's kind of, we're bringing it back up just so everybody understands where we're at. I do believe most of us have met. So prior to
Who's
that,
bringing it back up? The district or us?
no, this was
It's-
brought up.
It is a district.
Yeah.
And that's why it says that I'm asking for directive from you, direction. So if once you allow me, Mr. Campos, I would like to
Yes,
explain.
absolutely.
You're-
And so one of the things that also came up prior to you guys' arrival or election was that we had never met with any of our attorneys. And in the short time I think that you guys have been here, I think we've all had the opportunity to get to know our attorneys. They've presented, they've done different things. I know that in my conversations that I've had with other school board members at CSB and other places, everybody seems to be very happy and impressed with the work that Orbach, Huff, and Henderson does. And so I was, in my position, I was comfortable with them, you know, and us bringing that recommendation to us for them to be our general counsel so that we knew that when something's coming up, they were the ones that were going to be called and that we had access to the attorneys as opposed to having, you know, maybe 4 different firms not knowing who's doing what and what's going on. It was kind of just to streamline that. So that's pretty much all that I have. And so I guess what the motion that I would like to make, and then you can go ahead and discuss it, is...
Motion or amendment?
Oh, it's an amendment. I'm sorry. The amendment would be to continue and actually have our original intent is to have them as our primary legal. And then obviously, should we need anything else, we can always bring other firms on board to handle whatever it is that we would like handled.
Yeah, because I see some other companies up here that we were not utilizing, and I see them on this one. Like,
I
don't know if I'm gonna say their name.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's our meeting, we could
Yeah.
address whoever.
Who works the most with the lawyers for the school purposes?
We have both.
HR and CDO.
And do you guys find them more helpful than what we already have? How do you guys?
From the HR side, we've had issues with Orbach, Huff, and Henderson taking a long time to respond to our questions and our cases that we have, and when we're deciding whether we want to do personnel items, it's taking a long time to get them to give us an answer. What we found is that the 2 firms that are what we found in that the 2 firms that we utilize that have given us lower cost and quicker responses have been Littler Henderson, which is Adam Fiss, and Dean Adams, which is from Adams, Silva, and McNally. Like they, within a day or even half a day or sometimes even within an hour, we'll have an answer. And what we've been receiving from Orbach, Huff, and Henderson is a summary of, not really a direction, just a summary of what the law says. And that's not really what we need in HR. What we need is to give us direction on where we need to go. So for us, it'd be nice to have those 2 firms open to us to continue utilizing for personnel issues.
Correct. And so just to be in agreement, we've already made those changes. So those particular cases he's bringing to the attorneys that he's mentioned.
I just was wondering why there's a need as a board on our side, why we are giving, like we have a consultant, and then on top of that, we have lawyers. Why would we need both?
Well, they provide two different sources. Obviously, we got to have legal attorneys.
So for legal on our end, or is it for the school?
It's
A
over.
consultant helps you navigate to your goal, right? And then you have legal who tells you if it's legal or not. So either way, they got to work together, or you utilize them both to come to a decision.
So why would we need a consultant if the lawyers can just give us direction?
But they can't just give you direction. They tell you the law.
And also on the legal side, they are the ones that are going to make sure that everything that we do is done properly. I mean, we have to have legal firms. And so our recommendation was to keep Orbach, Huff, and Henderson. And again, we could, if there's other attorney firms that we want to engage with, we can more than happily do that. We just, at the time, we had no idea who was doing what. And it was just, understand, like on that Saturday board meeting, we oversee all the expenditures and the functioning of the district. And so we have to be in the know as to what's going on. Well, we didn't feel that we were in that position. And you guys might be in a different position because a lot of this stuff has kind of been ironed out, or at least trying to be brought forward so that you don't have to go through what we did when we would ask a question or find out what was going on with legal. And so that was the purpose of centralizing with one and then going out to
Does the board have
whoever we need.
access to who we're currently using before we added Orba?
All the attorney firms that are on here were the ones that are under contract with, correct? That are under contract with the district, but I don't know if you utilize any other ones. We only utilize those two firms.
No, we had to ask the district to speak to the attorneys, and they would arrange a meeting for us. It was very difficult.
And
Very
that's still the
difficult.
current process, or?
No, we have direct access to Orbach and Huff and to Adam from Littler and Mendelsohn.
The board actually has access to all the attorneys whenever they want.
Oh, I didn't have that information. I
And
don't have the
that's
numbers.
always been the case. Now, I, of course, am not privy to conversations you may have had, previous superintendent or anything like that, but as Alfredo said, that's any of the attorney firms they are. I think Mr. Campos said this to start with, are the board's, attorneys. So, Alfredo asked me to come up and just answer the part two, I guess, of the question. So, in business services, we have not used Orbach, because we don't have a whole lot going on. We're focusing on the one case Mr. Campos mentioned, which was with the previous law firm that starts trial Friday. The few times that we have, I would echo your comments in terms of slow to response, but my things are I don't have the tight timelines in many cases as you do. So that's all I can add to that.
Okay, your contract.
Okay.
Is there a contract that's on this? Or
No, not on here.
None that are attached that we see, but we should have contracts for all of them if they're all slated.
ending dates and
Alfredo.
stuff like that?
Ask a question, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Trustee Garcia asked who brought up this item, and it was me, right, as a superintendent, and asking for direction. Just a little bit of background. When I started as a superintendent, I was told by two board members that the previous superintendent was directed to transfer all the cases, current cases, to Orbach, and that they wanted me to do the same thing. Okay, so transfer all the current cases to Orbach. When I did my research in terms of that, I found out that in June 10, the board had approved all the previous law firms to extend their contract until June 30 of 2025 to continue with the cases that they have. Right? So that's why if you see, in light of previous conflicting directives, so the board approved the contracts of three that law firms that are there to finalize all the cases. Then about November, the end of October or November, I was told transfer everything to Orbach. They said, well, by two board members. And as always, I have been sharing with everybody, that's my responsibility to follow the direction from the whole board, right? So that's why I brought it here, to get direction from all of you, either 50, 41, or 32, and you tell me what to do, right? Because if I would have followed the direction from 2 board members, I wouldn't be following the direction of the whole board that approved in June 10 is Fresno, do we have those contracts?
I think the way
was
you're,
in June 10. So whatever you decide, that's what I'm going to do.
but the way you're wording it sounds like 2 board members gave you directives. Those were conversations of what we gave directives to. So in all fairness, I want to clean that up because that's not accurate. To be accurate, we had conversations with you. I had conversation with you as president, of the actions we took as a board. So I don't want to make it sound like 2 board members. It was collectively. And that was a decision we made in closed session, and then we had those conversations with you. But I just need to clean that up because that just doesn't sound right at all, to be fair.
Yeah, but Trustee Garcia, I was told to talk to the attorney from Orbach at Casby and transfer those cases by you two.
Oh, that conversation. Okay.
Yes, that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you told me to do that,
I did.
right?
Okay. Now I did. I see where
Mr.
you're going.
Campos told me to do that. Said, in my rationale, and it's always my commitment is to do what the board directs me, and I will do it.
No.
Okay,
Yeah.
just give me the direction. What is what you want to do? Because those directives were against the decision that the whole board made in June 10th. And we have the contracts. Unfortunately,
Yeah,
I
we're
don't know if we can
bamboozled.
get the copies right now, and we can share it with you. Where it said we are extending this contract
where
to
was
these law firms to handle what you have so far and finish them.
Correct.
Right? And
Because
you
there was
told me-
different information at that
Yes.
meeting. So I remember that.
And then you told me anything new, go to board back. I said, that's fine. That's not a problem because it's not a violation, right, of the previous board decision.
Right.
But once it appeared to be based on the evidence, right, of those decisions, that's why I brought it up for you to decide. And whatever you decide, that's what we're going to do. But I want all of you to make the decision.
And not every conversation is similar. Sometimes, like I said, there's different information, and I believe that's what happened to us in June to extend it. Because if I were to remember certain names that I'm seeing here, and I don't want to say it out loud, I definitely would vote in favor of it. But all right,
So I have another question. Mr. Andrade, is one of the companies up here listed that we're still under contract with, one that
all
is more responsive to the needs of HR?
Yeah, so the ones we use are Adam Fish from Littler, Mendelsohn, and we also use Dean Adams from Adams, McNally, and where is that one? Silva and McNally, and they're both under contract.
But you're not able to use them until they're sent to you from Orbach and up, you're saying?
Well, right now, we tried going through Orbach. It was taking sometimes 2 to 3 weeks to get a response, and we couldn't. There's some cases we just can't wait that long. We just went with Adam Fish and some of those.
Okay. Thank you.
So, and I just want to add a couple things. So, one of the things that's been a problem within kind of what's gone on in the past, and is that whether it's the former superintendent, sometimes or in the interim, actions that we take are not followed through by the superintendent or acting superintendent. And so when this was pushed through, this was in June, this was done and it was moved in a consent calendar. Normally something like that is done through action. And so these are some of the things that we've kind of struggled with the staff in basically understanding the direction that we're giving them. And even if it's been a directive and a 5-0 vote, things haven't been carried out. And that's one of the reasons for the consultants, because we have had several issues that now, I mean, obviously this is something now we have to have this conversation for transparency's sake, but there's been a lot of things that have been kept hidden, however you want to phrase that. And these are one of those things that we're trying to move forward to make sure that we are putting ourselves in a position where we're being successful and that the will of the board is being carried out. And it hasn't been in the past. And so those are some of the things that you've kind of inherited. But those battles have been fought for the past 2 years. And it's led a lot of different, we've had a lot of difficult conversations, a lot of difficult decisions. Sometimes we feel, or the previous board felt, that we weren't being given the most transparent advice from staff, and that there was unknowns. And so we tried to eliminate the unknowns so that we knew who the knowns were. Because I can tell you right now, when I look at these attorneys, I don't know AALR, I don't know what they're representing us. I do know that F3 was working with Joe on some AI stuff, as well as the current litigation that we have that's coming up for trial. But any other attorney firms, and we didn't know that until we brought it to the attention that we wanted to know what legal situations we were in, because we had no idea. It wasn't information that was being presented to us. And so for us, when we're trying to make decisions that oversee the whole structure and it getting down to the bottom to the student, we didn't feel that we were being given information that was direct and straight and honest. And so we started to just not understand what was going on. And so I did take it upon myself to investigate, look at some other attorneys, and then we did make it as a board decision to interview Orbach, Huff, and Henderson. Like I said, Trustee Stafford and I did that. Once we gave our report, then we shared out, and the previous board had chosen to move forward in that direction, and that didn't happen. And I can tell you, it didn't happen like 2 to 3 times that we had to mention it. It happened with the previous superintendent, and then when we brought it up to Dr. Arauz, and he did a little digging, that's when we found out that those contracts, even though cabinet members, superintendent, everybody was aware of our wishes, they snuck it into the consent calendar, or we're just approving everything and we didn't discuss it. And so, I take that back. I don't want to say snuck, but it was put somewhere where normally it would be an action item. A lot of the consent, sometimes, you might not oversee or look into all of them, is deep because it's kind of the regular business stuff that we are going through. And so that obviously leaves us with kind of a question mark, as to what we knew what our intent was and given the direction, but it being carried out there was a loss in the transmission of the information. And so we were just trying to kind of seal things up so that we had an understanding of where we were at.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I want to reaffirm and confirm what Mr. Campos was saying, because that was, I experienced that as a board member, a lot of items hidden, we can say quotation marks, right, because they were there in the consent calendar to be voted at once. So if that was the case, that's in the past. Here we have been very careful in the consent calendar, and the cabinet members, they know. And sometimes they say, oh no, this one doesn't go in the consent calendar. Complete transparency, 100% transparency, that is my promise to all of you. That being said, that's why I brought this up, because how Mr. Campos said, I did my digging, I found out that it was authorized, it was through the consent calendar, but it's up to you to make that decision, right? You need to reconsider those contracts, whatever you want to do. But I just want to follow the decision of the board. So thank you for mentioning that, Mr. Campos, because that is valid.
So yes vote means we're carrying on with the services how we have it set now, and a no vote means no?
Well, that is for
Well, I'm asking.
Oh,
Yes is to transfer everything to,
Yes.
right.
Correct.
So,
Or just to make a clear vote, so Orbic and Hub is more of a board
Primary.
preferred law firm, and then the other ones, the cabinet has been found more helpful, the ones that we have been using. Okay.
So,
And I just don't understand why we would need it, because I know the consultant's not a lawyer, I understand that, but why we would need both.
right.
on
So
our end.
I guess I still don't know, and whoever from cabinet, you're more than welcome to share the information. So
I'm gonna call for the vote.
I don't know from AALR, I don't know what they do for us, where they represent us. F3, like I said, I mentioned the 2, don't know where and how they represent us. Best and Krieger. Oh, wait, is that Fisk? Adam Fisk?
Would you like us to provide tables with the cases that they are handling and what areas they are providing?
Sure.
Is that what you would like?
Mr.
Oh,
Williams
sorry.
had a question?
So, to take a little liberty, for me, and thank you, Alfredo, for sharing, what the law firms that work effortlessly with him. For me, as you know, we had discussed the priority that I use for F3 on their specific expertise for what impacts my department. Without a doubt, and this is not a commercial, student data privacy, without a doubt, the best for me. School surveillance and type of legal considerations for compliance, data privacy, without a doubt, they're my go-to. Educational technology contracts, student data privacy with that, and software agreements. So
That's
since we're
F3.
talking about F3,
Okay.
that's my bubble for F3. And I also I follow the superintendent and the will of the board, but since you brought up F3, I'm like, that's my pitch for that part. And we talked about this.
And that was understood.
Okay.
And we're not separating any of them. We're just dealing with this as is, correct?
Yeah, well,
It's your decision to separate it based on the questions that the other trustees has been asking. What is the preference for cabinet? It's your decision. Whatever you
So we
consider.
already have existing contracts with these people because I can see it up here.
That's correct.
Okay, never mind.
So are we gonna,
I got it.
are these current contracts gonna end and then everything will be under Oregon Health if we keep Oregon Health?
At that point, when we are getting close to the expiration, that would be my recommendation. You can reconsider extending that, right? Or whatever you want to do, right?
Do
Because
we have a contract with Oregon Health or is it just as needed?
we have an open contract with all of them as needed. So that doesn't mean that all the cases, right? They go to them as we need them, we use them. Yeah, we call them and they provide the services, but you hear from different cabinet members.
Isn't that called like on retainer?
No,
No,
it's
but-
not a retainer. It's just it's hourly. Yeah, we have a contract with them, and then they bill us.
Okay.
And then they say conversation with Superintendent House about this, conversation with Vice President Garcia about this, and they send us the bill.
Okay.
And every month I sign it, I review it, and I sign it.
So then Mr. Williams can go to the F3 if he needs to. So, okay.
If that is your decision, right? Continue to do what we are hearing to do, similar to what it was approved, even though it was in consent calendar. I completely understand that, but I just wanted to get your decision based on what we talked.
I'd like to call for the vote.
So, but I'm,
Okay,
the
yes, we
current
do.
motion on the table is for you guys to utilize Orbeck, Huff, and Henderson as a primary law firm for existing and future cases? Yes? Okay.
So we're giving them our future cases, but we've gotten consultation from everyone that they're not as helpful as
You
we're
have to
using
keep and
now.
delegate from
I
that
just
point
wanna
on.
understand exactly what I'm going for.
so in the review of, so Orbach, Huff, and Henderson is going to do what's in the district's best interest. So whatever current cases we have, they would review them, and if they say, hey, keep this one with XYZ firm, then that would be continued. If there was one that was recently started by a different firm, and they said, this one we can take from here, then those case files would then be transferred to them, and they would be the ones. Now, you bring up a good point. So anything right now that is not an HR issue is being handled by a different firm.
And Adam.
Right. Well, I think you mentioned two different firms, correct?
There's two firms, but I just want clarification that like future cases, if we're sending it to one and then they send it to for HR for deadlines, that's not going to work for us. We have to send it to one firm and then they'll send it to.
No. So right now we've established that HR you've secured whoever you've been working with. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Litter
Yeah. That's where those are going to go. So that obviously is so if we identify if there's a weakness somewhere or maybe there's deadlines or timelines that aren't working for us, then obviously we have other options as well. And in these cases, I still, and maybe we can maybe it'd be a good idea to just for the new board members and us, just the litigation that's involved, who's being used. That way we're aware.
You suggested it?
Yeah.
I still call for the vote though.
Okay,
So, yes, but I would like to be
for her to
very
understand.
clear on the vote, because those are directions for me, right? So, when you make the motion, if you can clarify, what you said is perfect. HR continue to use, that's what I hear, okay? But you have the final decision in the motion also. What I hear is HR continues to use the attorneys, the law firms that are providing the best service. Every department continues to do that. I understand that. But my question is, what about the directive that I received? What do you want me to do with the directive of transferring all the current cases to ORBAC? Is that revoked by the board? Do you want the current law firms to continue with their cases? Do you want, how Mr. Campos was saying, present the cases to ORBAC and they decide which ones to take? That's the direction that I would like to get, so I can execute that, what your wishes, what you want, what the board wants. So just being very clear, please, in terms of the directions, for me to be able to understand them and execute them.
I have a couple of concerns. I conferred with Steve and we interviewed Orbach and Huff, and they were fine. I have no problem with that company. I do want our superintendents or our cabinet to have the choice of who they feel is the proper firm to handle their business. I do not think that Orbach and Huff should have a right to cherry pick from a stack of cases. Well, we'll take these, and we'll throw these over there. That could be a financial impact. That could be for who knows what reason. I trust what's here, and I trust my cabinet. I trust Orbach and Huff. It's not a dig on them, but I don't see giving someone a power to dictate what cases they'll take and throw the rest to, we'll dish it out as we please. That's not right. And I would encourage you to think about that. The other thing is cost. I would like to see each case who's working on what the costs are, what we have spent with each firm. And I should have asked that question on a previous item because we needed to know how much we were paying that firm and how much we have paid them to this point. Different subject. So I would still retain Orbach and Huff. I mean, still not a retainer, but an hourly, but keep our others. And let each department use the one that they see works for them. The trust issue, I think, with the people we have now, I don't have a trust issue. I trust everyone here. And I think we've solved that problem. And if I felt there was something wrong, and I won't say I don't trust Orbach and Huff, I just don't see giving them that power.
So what would be the motion, if you can formalize it, so you can, or just give it directions? We have a parliamentarian also. You can direct first. I refer to you, Mr. President, what you want to proceed, and we have the parliamentarian if we want to consult. What is your decision?
So why don't we move with what we originally had, which what the original intent was. So we move them over to review anything that they feel is in the best interest of the district to continue on with that, then they go ahead and do that.
When you say they, is who?
Orbach.
So you will continue to propose what Mr.
Yes.
Against what Mr.
Correct.
Stafford presented. Okay, just to be very clear, not a problem, right? Mr. Stafford is saying do not provide that power to Orbach to decide
No.
what cases. You are saying yes, let's provide that.
Right,
That is
so-
his proposal, and your proposal.
We could give the directive right now,
Right.
and then we could come back and address it later if there's another need with another firm.
Whatever you decide.
What is the superintendent's recommendation?
My recommendation would be to fulfill the will of the board when it was approved already, right? However, if there is a decision to change it, I will, not that I will support, I will follow that direction, right? Is the direction, I have an option, right? Because I can see, I trust both firms, right? We can receive from Orbach some services, some timelines that they are not met. Well, not timelines that they are not met, but it takes some time, right? I agree with that. That can happen to me too. But all the law firms, they're providing the services. But the gist of this is your decision. We have what you mentioned, Trustee Stafford, but we also have what Trustee Campos is saying. So it's up to you to decide that, and I, in Cabinet, we will follow what you decide.
So you made the
Do we have
motion.
a second
Well,
for the current motion that's on the table?
that's what I want to confirm one more time. Can you repeat your motion? Or what did you take out?
It is recommended that the Board of Trustees utilize Orbeck, Huff, and Henderson LLP as the primary law firm for existing and future cases.
All right, I'll second.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
So voting yes would be saying, agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Tony,
I'm sorry.
can you say
To
that
review
out loud?
and
I can
possibly
read it
transfer
also.
if it, and then decide if they need to take over, because there's some litigation that's been going on for a long period of time too. And are there other avenues we could do? Can we expedite those cases? There's everything to look at. But I want to agree with what you're saying. Like, you don't want to give one company the whole authority to pick and choose, cherry pick, as you said.
Yeah.
I really do agree with it, but I'm just trying to say it so we're done, because I have called for the vote twice.
Okay, so give me your options again, I'm sorry.
It is recommended that the Board of Trustees utilize Orbeck, Huff, and Henderson LLP as a primary law firm for existing and future cases.
If we vote yes. Okay.
And I second. So should you call for the vote?
Okay. Any further discussion?
Just to clarify the directions, so Alfredo and the cabinet members, they cannot select the firms that they are working with that are compliant? Is that what?
No, that's not what he said.
Okay, okay.
You got to vote.
That's not what you said. No.
Just to be clear,
Yeah.
I just want to understand.
Yeah, but that's not what he said when he proposed the motion. So can we vote?
Yes, please vote. Okay, upon taking a vote, the vote was 3 in favor, 2 opposed. 12.5 Personnel Resolution Number 13, 2425 release.
No, it's 12.4.
Oh, I skipped one. I apologize. I'll put on my glasses. 12.4 General Elections. Approval to change campus supervisors to campus security, including training and equipment and uniforms. And I do believe this is where we have a public.
Yes, but, can you make a motion to that?
Oh, yes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Trustee Garcia. Thank
Garcia.
you, Trustee Hall.
So we have John Phillips.
Oh, can I just read this?
Oh, yeah.
So before we come up, I'm just going to read something really quick. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation, depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. In addition, the president may take a poll of speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask that the additional person speak only if they have something new to add. And also, just one thing, if those of you in the audience, if you could just please not shout anything out, regardless of your feeling or how you feel on the particular topic, just to not disrupt what's going on with the meeting. So thank you.
Mr. President, before we have the community speak, I do want to make a motion on the item because
Okay.
I believe, if I'm correct, this is our turn to speak. Okay, so on item 12.4, I would like to make a motion to give direction to the district to review and negotiate the change with the bargaining unit on the feasibility to move from campus supervisors to campus security and negotiate. I want to be crystal clear about that because that's my motion. Yeah, absolutely. And I understand that there was confusion, but the intent, because I brought this forward, the intent is to always negotiate. There's no circumventing the process. Just like when the unions have an agenda or sunshine list, that they want to negotiate, it has to be board approved. If the district has a list, it has to be board approved as well. I'm just following the process. I want this recorded on minutes so everyone can hear the intent.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So
I did the make.
Oh, so we're good, okay, so now, do I have a second?
Second.
Oh.
But we don't vote.
Right, so now, we're gonna go through the public comments and then
Yeah.
discussion. Can you call it, please?
Hold on, they'll call your name out. Sorry about that.
John Phillips?
President Campos, Board of Trustees, cabinet members, Dr. Ra, thank you for allowing me to this time to speak. I brought up partially my concerns with this, and I wrote all of you letters. I was very transparent. I told Dr. Ra that I don't want to hide anything. I'm not a shy person. I'm very forthcoming and pretty blunt when it comes to safety and security concerns. My concern is we're given things like stop the bleed pack, right? This is something that I was just handed to keep on my bicycle that I ride. This is a serious concern that we have to keep stuff like this, and that tells me that we have serious threats on our school campus, right? I don't have numbers in front of me, but I can tell you that I know of multiple incidences on campuses in the United States within that have had shootings, stabbings, people trying to come onto campus to do harm to students and staff, right? Our purpose, our job is to stop those people from doing that. If we don't have the proper training or tools to do that, to stop people from coming on campus to do harm to the students and staff, what good are we? If we don't have a vest, something that could potentially stop a stab or a bullet wound, a gunshot, what good are we? How much better are we than anyone else that's on campus, right? When I brought this up, my idea was so that we could get the proper tools and training so that we could, as I like to call it, stay in the fight, right? Somebody comes at us with a weapon and tries to do harm, we can continue to stop that threat and possibly subdue with handcuffs or potentially use a pepper spray or something if that's something that's approved to stop a threat from coming on campus. This isn't meant to be used against little Johnny on campus that says, F you, I'm not going to class. That's never been the intent of what we would use any of these tools or trainings for. This is so that we can continue to provide the best safety and security for the students and staff on our campuses so that we can continue to know that we're going to go home just as safe as we arrived to school in the same manner, without having to fear that we're going to be shot, stabbed, anything like that, because the first person that someone is going to look for when they come onto campus is somebody with a badge, right? Somebody like us. And to me, it would mean a lot to my family to have that peace of mind, to know that, I've been doing this quite a while, to know that I'm going to go home just as safe as I arrived, and to know that their students and staff, their students that are on campus are going to be just as safe. So, thank you guys. I know I'm out of time, but I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You seconded it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now discussion?
I'm open. Discussion.
Oh, sure. I'm a little concerned that this hasn't been thought out all the way yet. And I'm not saying I'm against it, but I'm not for approving this right now. There's a long list there. We've talked about budget concerns. I really need to hear from the principals. Are they for this or are they not? The people on the ground that need to pretty much make this decision, because you're going to be writing the reports and you'll end up in court having to back this stuff. So number one, realize we work in an environment that's about 100, let's say 105 degrees in the summertime, which is low, we know. But wearing those vests, what are we going to do with employees when they show up without their vest? They don't have their vest on. They refuse to wear their vest. They show up without their handcuffs. We're going to send them home. They're out of service. They don't have their gear. There's just a lot of little questions that I would ask. Mainly, do some polling with the teachers and the administrators as to, it's like someone wants to hand out guns or something. Do we feel safe with people handling this type of equipment with our kids? I have 2 grandkids. I use them as Menifee School District. I certainly, they're elementary, so I would hope but there's been problems there. I would not like guns on their campus. I come from the inner city. I come from the hardest. I've been in every city in the hardest of hard places. So I just think you need to think this out really good. There's some things there that I've had some conversations that, you may not want to implement right away. You might want to test it out here and see, okay, rather than just put handcuffs out to the whole staff. I mean, some people may not want them, to tell you the truth. Everybody doesn't like to ride a bike. So it's something you really need to do in depth and school us on why you feel and each item. You have to explain each item. If you take some pepper spray and spray it in the hallway, how many kids are you going to affect? Who has asthma? Who's going to the hospital? Okay. It just needs to be more open. Okay.
Can I respond to the question?
No.
Okay.
So, cost. It seems as though costs aren't being considered here. It's a one-time cost, and I'm trying to understand it as I speak. But I grew up with police in my schools, and I didn't like it. I'll tell you, I did not like it. That was LAPD. Because at that time, they beat you. They had nothing in between. So, I want you guys to take your time, look at these lists real close, not issue any equipment until someone is trained thoroughly, and I think I heard that they had to go to certain places to get trained and through certain courses and things like that. So I can see myself coming around, but right now, till I hear from number one, the principals and the staff, they're the majority of the campus, the staff. Let's hear that. I can't just hear a campus supervisor. Well, the staff says, well, if Jason Miller's here, he can speak for him, but please don't speak for someone else. Let's see how everybody else feels. I feel that anything to be used as a weapon. Actually, I had some ideas. I thought about this when this came up because I bought a device that could puncture a window, cut a seat belt, or and a flashlight and an emergency light, all in one. I think I showed it to you. Yeah, it was a good device, I thought. And I'm concerned about overburdening. How many things are you going to carry? What are you going off to war or something? It's not necessary to be so visual. Let's say that. That makes some people very uncomfortable. I'm 65 years old. I still feel uncomfortable when the police pull me over, or I even have to talk to a police officer. Our SROs, they're the greatest in our deputies. But I've grown up a different way, so my opinion is different. So I implore you to, let's table this for now. Let's go over each item by item, and make sure we know what we're doing. And lawsuits can be a huge problem. Okay.
Did you want to speak before me?
I understand where you're coming from. You make some valid points. But the cost, there's no cost high enough that's going to protect our students, teachers, and staff. Ooh, I get emotional. So protecting our students is why I ran. And safety in our schools has to go, it's got to be at the highest level. So providing this stuff. And it's a negotiation. We're not saying that all of it's going to be approved, right? It's just for them to negotiate. Some might be taken away, some might not. And they might elect someone, hey, look, you can't, we're not going to give you the spray because maybe you're not ready for it, because they got to go through training. And maybe they didn't pass the training. Maybe their mindset's not right. I don't know. But all that stuff that I feel is going to be handled out during that training process. We're looking at a one-time shot. And, you mentioned, what if they forget this? What if they forget that? Well, where I work, if you forget your items that you're supposed to, your tools that you need to work, you got to go back home and come back.
We agree on that.
Right. So I totally agree with what you're saying, but at the same point, what he was saying is, I want him to go back home to his family. A T-shirt, a jacket is not going to protect him from a knife wound or some type of gunshot. And yes, some people do get scared because there's an officer there. But I'm sure it's probably a small amount versus the amount of people that seeing this officer here, I feel more protected. That they are around. We're here to protect our students, and if they're safe, if they feel safe, they're going to do better in school. If our teachers and staff feel safe, they're going to be better at teaching their assignments or their job. It's just like going into any other workforce. If you walk and you're not safe, you're not going to have a good outcome on your production. So, again, I agree with what you're saying. It all has to be processed, and the training has to be on point. The right people have to be at the right spot, the right time, in the right places with the equipment. And maybe I don't want to wear that. I don't want to have this. That's fine. And then we deal with that as that comes. So that's what I would say.
I'm going to talk about it. It might be a little bit, it might be long, but I also open it up to questions from this board. I just want to make a couple comments to some of the statements you made. You're asking for principal's opinion. I'm going to 100% disagree with that because they're not the experts in security. That man over there is. His name is John Hannon. He's the expert. He's been doing it for many, many years. And I think...
And please be kind. Don't talk down to me.
I'm not trying to talk down.
Okay.
I'm just highlighting the fact that
say.
he's the expert.
Okay.
Uniforms and tools that are required. Everybody who wears a uniform knows they have to wear the uniform. That's part of the uniform. But again, this action item is pretty clear. We're giving the district direction to negotiate. We're not saying everybody is going to just do X, Y, and Z. We're definitely not handing out guns. Pepper spray is a defensive tool. I like police in schools. I'm going to be honest. I do. It's just how they're managed. And just like every position, everybody's managed a certain way. The last thing that really got my attention, you said, it's not like we're going off to war. I've been in a stabbing in a school. I've been involved in a shooting in a school and where I work. And I've been there 25 years and I survived. And a lot of us have these same conversations. We carry handcuffs. The only way to get those handcuffs is you go through extensive training. And it's just not here, go ahead, put it on. It's nothing like that. It's pretty intense. And they're all modulars of the police academy for all these tools. And if the standard is that high for the police officers, it should be for anyone who's carrying these tools. And they're critical because this world is changing on us. It's not how it used to be. In some neighborhoods, it's really good. In some neighborhoods, it's really bad. I hear this concept, and I hope this resonates. It's better to have a fire extinguisher handy and not need it than not have it and need it. And it's kind of the same thing, just two different elements. We're trying to protect everybody, students, staff, community. And a while back, I've had these conversations with Mr. Hannon, and I even told him, I can't remember the last time some of our officers put handcuffs on students. It's more of outside threats than it is internal threats. And that's something to think about. You know, not everybody's going to be pleased. Not everybody's going to be pleased. I wasn't pleased when we were given these tools to carry ourselves. And we're just authorizing them to negotiate. What they decide is what's going to come back to us, and we'll find out what they accept or not, decline, you know. I think in reality, I definitely think principals are experts in education, not in safety. And I know that's harsh, but it's reality for me because I live it every single day, even today. I work in the field, the safety and security, that I might have a strict requirement on how to do my job, when to use force, when not to use force, and an administrator might say, I don't agree with that. Then we have to go to my supervisor, who's the expert, who's also a chief of police, and say, well, you follow protocol, policy. This is how it is, or you didn't follow. And then that'll be addressed accordingly, whether they're right or wrong. But I do open to questions. I don't have a problem answering any questions. And I also would like Mr. Hannon, if he wants to say anything, I think we should invite him up here as well.
You're confusing me.
Say that again?
I don't understand when you say you don't want the principals. Everything ends up in the principal's hands. The principal, other than the fire or police, are the commander of that site. They can't be questioned. The reports have to go to, there's a whole ed code system. You can't just bypass and say, well, here's security, now we'll just take over and we got it. No.
Well, to be fair, principals would handle the discipline, correct? And so if there's something criminal, law enforcement gets involved. If this is a situation where, let's just talk handcuffs for a second. Usually to get to that phase to apply handcuffs, there has to be some type of violence, right? Whether the aggressor is coming after you or they won't stop assaulting and battering someone, right? That's typical, right? So then at what point would you not use handcuffs? Hey, get off that person, and they won't stop and they're continuing. And next thing you know, you have excessive amount of blood coming out. Then what do? Do you just keep telling them to stop, or do you apply handcuffs? Hey, I have to stop that threat. It just, there's so many different scenarios where they could be used and where you could avoid them. And that's what the training is about. It helps you make that split-second decision.
I believe in training.
But that's the only way they'll get these tools.
But I do believe the principals are the really command their schools. Anyway, that's.
Trustee Anaheim, would you like to share your thoughts? Or? So, you know, I think a couple things. I don't think that this decision, when it's ultimately executed through the negotiation process, I'm pretty sure the principals will have a say. I'm pretty sure campus security, I'm pretty sure everybody involved, the community will have a say. You know, I think it's a little naive to say that this wasn't thought out. I mean, there's tons of equipment here, and I don't think that just comes out of the air. I do believe that there's been thought put behind this. I think that what's being proposed today is to move forward in the negotiation process to see how we can resolve this. This doesn't just involve, again, when you look at the overarching picture, we are making decisions that are going to affect parents, that are going to affect students, staff, administrators, everybody. And I think as a collective group, we'll come to the right decision to see what equipment we feel is necessary based on the negotiation process. I value John's opinion. To me, it's one of those things where, you know, we have to consider, you know, the safety of everybody. And obviously, throughout the negotiation process, I think people will have the opportunity to say, hey, that's not for me. Or some will say, hey, that's exactly what I would feel. And understand this, anybody who accepts whatever the terms are, they're willingly accepting it, the responsibility that comes with it. We can't predict the future because we just can't. But I know for me, and I'm kind of along with Trustee Hall, you know, I think when we first started, we made a huge investment and commitment for the safety of our students and staff. And I think this is the next tier and the next level in order to do that. And so for me, I want to ensure to the community that, hey, we want to do what's best, because any incident that happens, we want it minimized, and we want to be able to have the tools and resources and the decision makers. I trust our site administrators are going to make the right decisions, and I'm pretty sure that there's going to be multiple things going on. Now, we do understand that stuff will happen in seconds, and depending on the location and our communication, all those decisions are going to happen fast. And so that being said, I don't understand how the whole role goes, because I'm not in that, but I do trust that Trustee Garcia does understand that, but I also understand that the role of the principal and how that's all going to lay out. And I think at the end of the day, we'll be able to come up with a comprehensive solution that's going to ensure the safety of everybody, and so that when something does happen, we're able to mitigate it with minimal, I don't want to say casualty, minimal loss or damage done on site. And so, I mean, I know these are the kind of conversations that are difficult. At the same time, I do understand that, we have students and parents who don't send their children to some of our school sites because they feel they're not safe. And if we don't have that conversation, or if we're thinking that doesn't exist, then we're in a fairyland. We're not dealing with the reality. And maybe we do start to poll to see why kids do not attend certain schools. Why are they transferring out? And it is an issue. It might not be an issue that we talk about openly and publicly a lot about, but it's an issue. It's in the community. It's out there. And so the only way to start to get there is, I believe, is moving this forward. And I trust the negotiation process. I trust our people in HR. I trust our bargaining units. I trust that their experience, they're going to come together and figure out something that is going to be worthy. And again, when it comes to the cost, hey, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Because the cost of safety, I mean, who wants to be the one person where, something was cut or short, and then now that's the end result. And I don't ever want to even think of that. But I think the best way to avoid that is prevention and preparedness, and just to make sure that we're moving forward. We're doing everything we can, and ultimately, I think the district will benefit. All the district will benefit on the decision. So, thank you.
Would you like to hear my opinion?
Sure.
Yes, definitely the safety of our students and our staff is our top priority. And this would be a big step in ensuring that. But it's such a huge step and I can see what you mentioned, Trustee Garcia and Trustee Campos, Trustee Hall, also what Trustee Stafford mentioned. Just thinking out loud as a member of this community, as having two kids who graduated from Paris High School and transferring to the time that they were in school. Have you thought, just an idea, right? Or if you consider doing a survey with our parents, the ones who are directly affected, how do they feel about this extra security, enhancing the safety of our students to this way? I think their input will be really important, even though board members are elected by the whole community, but the ones who have a direct interest, right, are the parents of the students, just to get a feeling. Same thing with the campus supervisors, the rest of the campus supervisors, how they feel, the rest of the staff, right, to make this a really a democratic decision. Not that you are the elected officials and it's democratic, right? But due to the sensitivity of this decision and looking at and listening to the opinions, what you have you thought about it, maybe having the survey or getting the input in some way, whatever way you think. It not necessarily may be a survey, having a presentation of how that is going to look like, even after it's negotiated or before it's negotiated, just to be completely transparent, in our community has a say, right, on that. just my opinion, have you thought, the question is, have you thought about that? Do you consider that would be a possibility? How do you feel about getting input from the staff, from everybody, right? Because I agree that safety is really important, and I agree with you, Trustee Hall, right, that there is no price to ensure the safety of our students and our staff. But how would the community would feel about that? I think that might be something important. But just for your consideration, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rouse. With us agreeing to allow the district and the unions to negotiate this, one big thing that comes out of it, and you kind of touched on it about people feeling safe sending their students to school, is a higher level of professionalism. I'm not going to say it publicly, but there are schools where we have some group saying, hey, you can't touch my kids, you can't break up fights, you're not security. Then you have some that say, why didn't you break up the fight? So, that's a mixed message, and that's not fair. And I think to go back on the comment where I made about the principals, of course their input is valuable, but I don't believe that we should, how do I word this? That we should completely put only the trust into principals. They're experts in education, just like law enforcement is experts in law enforcement. And those are two different roles. I've learned that over the years. I had a chief of security who was a former police officer and his wife in education, and those roles never came together. They were always conflicting. And that's the hard part to understand. And people don't want to say it, but no, I have a say-so because I have a title. It's not about that. It's about providing the services. And I'm 100% in favor of them negotiating. Now, what they come out of it, that's because they negotiate it. And I think everybody needs to understand they are going to decide the direction they go before we go and say, how do you feel about this in regards to the tools they haven't negotiated? We don't even know the direction they're going yet. So how can we tell the public that? And also, we are elected officials to speak up on about our areas, where our trustee areas. So yes, we have thought about it. Yes, I've had numerous conversations. In fact, I don't know many people that I haven't had this conversation with. And I think only 2 people that I've talked to be fair, didn't like it because they thought, oh, why are we going to put police in school? They've seen some of the things that happen where I work. I'm not against it, Law enforcement and protecting our kids, it's important. This world is changing. Serious things happen. You can't predict bad behavior. One person could be, under the influence of some heavy-duty drugs, and we can't control them. What do? Stop, and they still attack and hurt people? We can't do that. We have to be proactive and take care of our kids and our students and staff. I'm talking too much.
Okay, one last comment. I worked for the district for about 9.5 years. And then, I guess about 7 of those years, I opened Heritage High School with Grant Bennett. I ran custodial and security at the same time. Now they don't even do that. They run, the plant supervisor does nothing hardly in my eyes. But I'm just being brutally honest. I've run it. I've commanded men, 20 years in the fire department, 16 as a captain. I know people that how to control people. We had fights at Heritage all the time. I was in the hallway wrestling kids that were wrestlers. I can tell you who the other teacher was. Me and him had them, and we managed to control things. There's ways that kids can get hold of things and turn them into weapons. And I would hate to see, I know you have standards that you're going to adhere to, and you say, well, you're not the right guy for handcuffs, or you're not the right guy for pepper spray. Well, the pepper spray has no feelings. Once it's sprayed, it's anybody in that hallway is going to be affected. Someone could die from that, from asthma. It would kill my daughter-in-law. She has bad asthma. So be aware of, let the SROs do their job. Let us honor them. Don't try to be more than what you can do. I think a good comment I heard the other day was, what is the span of control? And at what point is one security, if he hadn't called for backup, are those kids, if they decided to jump in, not gonna take those things from him and use them on him?
Great question.
It's, I've worked in the position, I know you have too. So I'm just trying to qualify myself. Don't let me fool you that you think I don't know. Okay, because I know. And I am trying to just engage you to look at that list line by line and really have a good conversation about it. I took my time and had a conversation with our head of security, Mr. Hanning. I just didn't come in here just because I don't like something. It's the right way to go. And I think that I'm not being wishy-washy. I don't want those things unless they're properly down from the budget to the effect, to the harm, to the good, till it's all put on the table. Not being, I feel like this item was snuck on the agenda. I wasn't told it was here. Now we want to get down to real basics here. This item was snuck on the agenda. We didn't have an information item that explained this to us. So who put it here? So why didn't you tell the rest of the board?
We've had many conversations with the superintendent.
For this item on this agenda, why was the board not told?
Because we can't talk about action items. You know that as a board
You can
member.
go through the superintendent.
So with all due respect, this item was on last month's agenda. And so if it wasn't read, kind of like I'll admit, on the consent calendar and we didn't catch that, I understood that.
It was, but we never finished the meeting.
But the point is the information was there. And so, coming to today, it's the second time it's been on the agenda. First time it didn't get spoken to, but in reviewing, last month's, I knew it was on the agenda. And so all I'm saying is, it's not like it was snuck in there because it was.
What was it on the other agenda? What item was it? Information?
No, it was an action item.
So it's still an action item. Same thing.
Right.
Same thing.
Well,
Same thing.
but it's.
How are you changing it? Action is action, right?
Right.
Okay.
But you could have a
I'm done
conversation.
with it. My line is no. You're not listening.
No,
Okay.
I understood. So
All right.
at that
All
point,
of us have a point of view.
Yep.
You got two ganged up on one, and you're not listening. So I'm done. I'll just vote.
fair enough. Okay. So seeing no further discussion, please vote. Upon the vote being taken, the vote was 4 in favor, 1 opposed. And moving on to 12.5, the resolution number 13:24-25, release and or reassignment of administrative certificated employees. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Anaya. And seeing no discussion, please vote. Thank you. 12.6 Personnel Resolution Number 15:24-25, elimination / discontinuation and layoff of certain classified management employee for the 2025-2026 school year. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Hall. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Stafford. Seeing no discussion, please vote. Upon a vote being taken, the vote was 5 in favor, 0 opposed. 12.7 Business, approval for filing 3 Form J-13A request for allowance of attendance due to emergency conditions. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia. Second. Thank you, Trustee Hall. Seeing no discussion, please vote. Upon the vote being taken, the vote was 5 in favor, 0 opposed. 12.8 business selection of an independent auditor with no fiscal impact. Do I have a motion?
So we're supposed to, oh, I'm sorry.
Do I have a
So
motion?
moved. So moved.
Oh, Trustee Garcia on the motion.
A second.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Trustee Anaya. Okay, discussion?
So we're supposed to select one, correct?
Yes.
So then we have to,
We can have a discussion and
do we make a motion to say one person? Because we have 4 up here. Or one group, excuse me.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if anybody wants to recommend somebody.
These are the people that were here last.
Yes.
Are all 4 still an option?
Yes. We have to pick one. So I'll start. When I was looking at the different, hearing the presentations and also seeing the different options, CWDL was the one that I was leaning forward for a couple different reasons. They did give us a discounted rate, but more importantly than that, when I was looking at who we were going to have authorization to work with, there was 2. When I looked at everybody else's personnel, we did have 2 people from within CWDL that were CFEs. I think it's certified fraud experts. Had I don't know if it's the title or the certificate. So they were CPAs, but as well as having the CFEs. Now every other proposal that I saw only carried 1. And so in reviewing all their different processes, for me, when I looked at CDWL, they had a layering of the process kind of going through the personnel to make sure that when everything's said and done, that it was done complete. And not to say that the other ones weren't, it's just the way that I saw their preparation in how they did it, and then whose eyes were going to kind of go through and make sure, it might start with the initial staff, and then it gets moved on to the CPA, who's a CFE authorized. They pass it down the road. Someone else who will also, another CPA will take a look at it. And then, and I believe that person also had a CFE. And then the final review was another person, I forgot who the name was. And then they kind of gave it final approval as to, okay, everything's set in motion. We've checked everything out. Everything looks good. So for me, in looking at all the different processes and whose eyes and would be going through it and what they were offering us, for me, I felt they were the ones that were, I think, would serve us for our interests best. And they were, I think, the last ones to present. But that's my position on why I would have chosen or selected that group. So obviously we have to, either we can go through, or if anybody else has something else that they saw in their research and in reviewing all the information, please share it, because obviously, we do have to make a decision.
Who's currently? Who is it?
Ide Bailey, I think.
Bailey?
No, Ide Bailey.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're right.
And I don't know if it makes a difference, but my number 2 was Negro. So is there any other? So
if there's no discussion, maybe you should make a motion.
well, I motion that we select CWDL unless there's any other discussion to someone else to oppose or bring another group forward to have that discussion.
I had the same kind of findings that you did on CWL. Even in the short presentation that they got, just seemed to be on top of things, and then looking at what they had to offer, it just seemed more than what the other ones did, in
Right.
my opinion.
Well, and you bring up another point. They were well versed in the public sector, private corporate sector, and obviously within the school district system. So that wasn't anything. You just reminded me of that when I was looking through their information. Now, I will say this: they weren't the biggest. There were other firms that were larger, had a lot larger of a clientele. I don't necessarily like going with the smallest. Maybe, when I'm looking at different things, I'm kind of looking for them to cater to us so that we're not just a small needle in a haystack, but they're mid-sized because we do want someone who has obviously experience, but maybe not on the starting end or, with a smaller group of a client list. So that kind of all went into me proposing. So now, if no one has any other information to bring forward another firm, then I would motion that we select CWDL as our independent auditor. Do I have a second? Or, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Hall. Please vote. Upon a vote being taken, the vote was 5-0. 5 in favor and 0 opposed. Informational items. 13.1, curriculum, revised English elective course, critical science fiction, and the future. 13.2, business revolving cash report, January 2025. And 14.1, adjournment. The special board meeting of the Board of Trustees for February 25, 2025. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee Anaya. Seeing no discussion, please vote. On a vote being taken, the vote was 5 in favor, 0 opposed. And the meeting is adjourned at, is it 6:26?
Yes.
6:26.